Over 200 kilos of Wagyu beef had vanished from the warehouse at the downtown Seattle branch. The bold number on the financial report made Gabriel Stone's hands tremble slightly, as if someone had reached into the past and carved into an old scar. Years ago, at 17, he had curled up to sleep under a kitchen table, clutching scraps of leftover meat like treasure. 100 grams back then could decide an entire day of survival. Now, 200 kilos gone without explanation, and he knew for certain that behind it lay a darker secret. His phone buzzed. His daughter Sophie's voice came through, cold and sharp. "You still chose the restaurant over me, didn't you?" He stayed silent. No excuses, no argument. Only a stifled sigh in his throat before he hung up. Then he pulled on his worn coat, tucked the report into his old leather bag, and left the office. In the rearview mirror, a photo of the kitchen crew stared back at him. Young faces, smiles full of faith. They had once believed, as he did, that Copper and Pine was a family. And yet now, the place reeked of silence. 9 months had passed since Gabriel last set foot in the downtown branch. Ever since Victor Kane had been appointed manager, every report sent back was perfect. No complaints, no issues, just an unnatural quiet. He remembered his father's words, "A restaurant is never silent. If it is, it means something is rotting." He parked on the corner. Outside, the Copper and Pine sign glowed brightly in the drizzling Seattle rain. Pulling his hood low, he stepped inside, not as an owner, but as an ordinary customer. Worn shoes, a faded coat, shoulders slightly hunched. No one recognized the man who had once signed million-dollar contracts. The smell of freshly baked bread filled the air, but there was no warmth in it. The scene looked sealed behind glass. The head chef gave orders not with his voice, but with his eyes. Knives clattered against cutting boards with a sterile echo, like metal scraping walls. Employees avoided eye contact, and the hostess's smile flashed too quickly, too forced. Gabriel quietly took a seat at the bar, his eyes scanning every detail. The crack in the wall, the flickering light, the frayed edge of the menu. Each small imperfection screamed of decay at the core. He asked the bartender softly, "Still sourcing from River Valley?" The man behind the counter hesitated, nodded, then quickly glanced toward the office in the corner. "Yeah, still from there. Victor's managing things here." The last words fell heavy, like lead. Just then, Victor stepped out. His shirt was crisp, his smile stretched too wide to be real. He extended a hand. "Welcome, sir." Gabriel shook it calmly, his eyes giving nothing away. "Nice place," he said lightly. "I hear this month's report was interesting?" Victor's smile faltered for a second, his eyelid twitching before he steadied himself. "Oh, inventory's tricky, hard to control, but I've got it handled. You, sir, you must have far bigger things to do than spend time here." The words seemed polite, but they were a net, trying to usher him out the door as fast as possible. Gabriel only smiled. In that instant, he saw it clearly. Victor was afraid, and that fear weighed on every employee in the room. As Victor walked him out, a young line cook straightened his back for the first time. The moment Victor's shadow disappeared, the kitchen exhaled all at once, like a bowstring released. Just for a moment, then silence again. "Thank you for visiting," Victor said, hand on the door, smile sharp as a blade. Gabriel nodded slightly. "I'll be back. But perhaps not in the way you expect." He didn't head straight for his car. Instead, he stood hidden at the corner, eyes locked on the dark alley behind the restaurant. The answers weren't on the menu. They were in the shipments being funneled out at night. A phone call, Lena Park's voice came through on the line. "You called so urgently. What's going on?" Gabriel stared through the foggy glass, where yellow light spilled into distorted shapes. "I need you to track every premium order this week. Wine, Wagyu, truffles. Don't tell Victor. And one more thing. Get me access to payroll. Quietly. No trace." You're investigating Victor?" Lena's voice trembled. Gabriel closed his eyes and whispered, "No, I'm searching for something worse, and I need to be the first to hear it." He hung up, sat back in the dark car, his heart pounding. In the reflection on the windshield, he didn't see a CEO or a man of power. He saw a father, a man who had once starved, now forced to watch his legacy rot. In the silence, he whispered to himself, "The game has begun." The white van sat motionless at the corner of the street, 3 lampposts away from the back of Copper and Pine. From a distance, it looked like an ordinary sanitation vehicle, bulky toolboxes, drums of industrial cleaner, a crooked Seattle Clean and Service decal on the side. But inside, the air was strung tight as a wire. Gabriel Stone sat in the back seat, the glow from the laptop casting his face into a ghostly mask. Before him lay a velvet tray neatly lined with cameras smaller than shirt buttons, their black lenses glinting like the eyes of a predator in the dark. The technician, lean and sharp with a close-cropped cut, spoke in a voice barely louder than breath. "Not a single wasted word. 5 minutes in plant, then pull out. If anyone sees us, we're the cleaning crew." Gabriel nodded. No further instruction was needed. He knew these were the kind of men who had once moved through battlefields and now carried those tactics into a restaurant. The van door slid open. 5 figures in ash-gray janitorial uniforms slipped out, merging with the shadows. Tool bags clinked softly at their sides. The only difference was that none of them carried water buckets. Inside the restaurant, the air pretended to be calm. Staff had gone home. Only the kitchen and cold storage lights remained. It was Victor Kane himself who had signed off on the special deep clean night, never realizing he had signed his own death warrant. The technician slid a camera into the crack of the dry goods room door, disguised as a chipped hinge. Another went deep into the freezer hinge. A third was hidden in an old flower pot in the kitchen corner, its leaves veiling the lens. And finally, the Crow, a wide-angle camera, settled atop the employee parking canopy. Every movement was reduced to breath and silence, leaving no trace of their presence. Back in the van, the laptop screen split into 4 frames. The dry goods room, the freezer, the back door, the lot. All was still. Only yellow light spilled across empty tiles. Gabriel leaned closer, his hand clenched so tight his knuckles turned white. He did not blink, even when a bulb flickered and died. Every small movement made his heart skip half a beat. He whispered, not to anyone, but as if carving a vow into the air, "They don't know it yet, but I've started watching." The night dragged on with the cruelty of torture. At 2 a.m., the last staffer left, doors locked. The restaurant sank into darkness. Gabriel never closed his eyes. He brewed coffee only to let it go cold, sat rigid as stone, his gaze fixed on those 4 little windows of surveillance. A young employee returned to the freezer, moving slowly, carefully, mopping the floor 3 times. Excessively thorough, Gabriel noted. An hour later, Victor emerged from his office, locked every door, shut every light, meticulous to the point of obsession. Gabriel frowned. Those who know they're guilty are always too clean. Near 4 a.m., a gust of wind sent a plastic bag skittering across the lot, a pale blur sweeping the lens. Gabriel jolted up, heart pounding, only to realize it was trash. He let out a low, bitter laugh. When he finally collapsed forward on the keyboard, stealing only minutes of uneasy sleep, he was snapped awake by a sound. An alarm flashed in the corner of the screen. Movement in the storeroom. The feed came alive. A stranger in rubber gloves crouched low. He lifted a crate of Wagyu beef, then carefully stripped off the label, pressing over it with a blank white tag. Every motion was practiced, seamless, without hesitation. In the freezer, another worker lifted a tray of cheese, placing it gently into a clean trash bin. Not tossed, not hidden, but placed as though part of a ritual. Neither of them even glanced at the cameras. They moved as if they already knew where the blind spots were. Gabriel froze, his skin crawling. This was not petty theft. This was procedure, a system. He grabbed his notebook and scrawled a line. They know how to dodge. They've been recorded before, or someone is teaching them. He sat motionless, eyes bloodshot, his suspicions hardening into stone. This was no longer a trivial scam. This was a criminal network beating inside the very heart of his restaurant, and at the center of it, he knew without doubt, was Victor Kane. The clock on the laptop ticked over to 11:12 p.m. The dry snap of an alert broke the silence. Motion detected, walk-in freezer. Gabriel Stone shot upright, eyes locked on the screen. The image appeared, a skinny young kitchen hand in a hooded sweatshirt, rubber gloves already on. He hesitated in the doorway of the freezer, looking directly at the camera. For a second, Gabriel thought he might run, but he didn't. His eyes were calm, almost accustomed to being watched. Then he lowered his gaze and began his work. Strips of Wagyu beef were cut, wrapped in old brown paper. No tape, no labels. Careful, precise, deliberate. Each block of meat slid into a black plastic bag, stacked without a sound. Then came wedges of aged cheese, bottles of olive oil, a crate of unopened red wine. All vanished into the black bags as if they had never existed. The freezer door opened again. The sound of heavier footsteps approached. Gabriel switched the camera angle and his heart sank. Victor Kane stepped inside. No uniform, no tie, only a black coat. His face was cold, without a trace of expression. Victor bent down, inspecting each bag one by one. He said nothing. The young kitchen hand stood frozen, like a student waiting for a teacher to grade his work. When Victor gave the faintest nod, the two of them hauled the bags toward the back door. At once, the alley camera flickered. Darkness lay thick, but the infrared lens revealed two small silhouettes. Teenagers standing beside a battered old bicycle, its wheel bent, a torn backpack slung over one shoulder, hands covered not with gloves but with wool socks frayed at the fingertips. The exchange lasted 30 seconds. The black bags changed hands. The boys vanished into the night like phantoms. No handshake, no greeting, only the creak of wheels fading into the distance. Victor returned in silence. His face remained a slab of stone. The door slammed shut, leaving behind a suffocating stillness. Gabriel sat frozen. He wanted to scream, to smash the screen, but his throat locked tight. This was no longer suspicion. This was living proof. He replayed the footage again and again. Every nod of Victor's head, every bag that changed hands, was another blade carving into his chest. Years of building copper and pine into a symbol of trust, now reduced to a black market where homeless children were used as tools. The following night, the ritual repeated. But this time not one, but 3 employees entered in turns, carrying load after load. And as if by immutable ritual, Victor always appeared last, reviewing each bag, then allowing the boys to vanish into the dark alley. Gabriel noted every timestamp, every face, every step. In his notebook, the red ink cut deep into the page. Not petty theft. This is procedure. They rotate staff. No one repeats twice in a row. Victor equals conductor. Suddenly, one feed from the pantry camera made him freeze. A shift schedule was pinned to the wall. 5 names slashed through with red, each marked with Victor's signature. Gabriel zoomed in. Every crossed-out name matched the nights of the deliveries. His body turned cold. This was not just embezzlement. This was a system. A hidden machine running with precision. And in Gabriel's mind, one image burned bright. The weary eyes of those 2 boys in the alley. They were not accomplices. They were victims. His voice rasped, hoarse and low, meant only for himself. This is no longer about losing Wagyu. This is about losing the childhood of those boys. The pen halted. Then, with trembling yet sharp strokes, Gabriel wrote 3 words across the page. Exploitation of minors. Gabriel Stone sat frozen before the screen, replaying the frame again and again. This time it was not Victor, nor the employees who had grown too practiced in their scheme. What made him stop was the face caught briefly under the infrared light. A tall, thin teenager with hollow dark eyes and messy hair spilling out from under a faded hoodie. The lens captured a detail so small yet piercing. From the frayed backpack, a plastic card had fallen out. Gabriel zoomed in, adjusted the light, and the trembling letters appeared. Marcus, grade 11, student ID. He clenched his notebook, heart pounding hard. A minor, a student. Dear God. The next night, Gabriel was not in his apartment watching through cameras. He drove an old sedan close to the alley, cut the lights, and sat in the dark. At 11:20, Victor appeared again, and with him was Marcus. The boy took the heavy bags, his shoulders trembling under the weight. No words, no glance. He melted into the night like a shadow. Gabriel opened his car door, the Seattle cold striking his face. He moved quickly, keeping just enough distance, following each step Marcus took. The boy did not run, nor did he dawdle. His pace was steady, weary, as if his body had memorized the path through instinct. 3 blocks, under flickering yellow lamps, then into a dark alley where streetlights no longer reached. Marcus tapped 3 times on the door of a battered van parked beneath a rusted stairwell. The door creaked open. A younger boy, maybe 14, peeked out. His eyes lit up, not with greed, but with relief. Marcus placed the cash he had just received from Victor into his brother's hands. Not a single dollar kept. Enough for 3 days, Marcus whispered. Their palms touched briefly, not in celebration, but in a ritual of survival. Gabriel, hidden behind an iron fence, felt his eyes blur. These children were not criminals. They were victims, turned into links in Victor's foul machine. Inside the van, Gabriel glimpsed a dim flashlight, a few packs of instant noodles, a dented plastic water jug. This was their home, the place Victor called a delivery point. The following day, Gabriel intercepted Marcus near a small sandwich shop, the boy clutching a cheap paper bag. Head down. "Don't be afraid. I'm not the police," Gabriel said, his voice low, rough, but steady. Marcus froze, eyes darting wildly, body tense like a cornered animal. Gabriel raised both hands slowly. "I only want to invite you to lunch. Sit with me. Just one meal. The silence weighed heavy. Then Marcus gave a faint nod, almost without realizing it. They sat in the corner of the diner, one sandwich untouched, the other devoured in hurried bites. For 20 minutes neither spoke. Only the sound of chewing and the faint hum of the refrigerator filled the air. At last, Marcus spoke, eyes fixed on the table. "You followed me." Gabriel did not deny it. "Yes, I needed to understand why a boy like you has to carry those bags." Marcus gave a dry laugh. "Because to them, I am not a person. I am only weight, only a shadow that moves." The words pierced Gabriel's chest, not with anger, but with a deep ache. He looked at the boy for a long time, then nodded softly. "Then perhaps it's time someone reminded them that you are still a human being." Marcus lifted his eyes for the first time. In that look there was no fear, only the exhaustion of a soul forced to grow old far too soon. And in that moment, Gabriel Stone, once dismissed as a distant CEO, made a silent vow. He would not allow these children to be swallowed by the darkness any longer. The small sandwich shop sat wedged in the corner of the street, its flickering neon sign casting a frail, uncertain glow. Marcus hunched over, clutching the crumpled sandwich wrapper in his hand, his eyes fixed on the table as if it were the only safe place left in the world. Across from him, Gabriel Stone sat in silence, his breath held back. He knew that one wrong word, one misplaced tone, could send the boy bolting into the night, gone forever. "Marcus." Gabriel lowered his voice, each word deliberate and slow. "You can trust me. I'm not the police. I'm not a broker. I'm here because I want to stop what is destroying you." Marcus let out a bitter laugh, his thin shoulders trembling. "That's what adults always say. And then we disappear, just like Eli." The name fell heavy onto the table, sinking like a stone into dark water. Gabriel felt his chest tighten. Eli, the boy who had vanished from the cameras 4 nights ago. Where had he gone? Gabriel inhaled deeply, then did something he hadn't planned. He reached into his wallet. Not for money, not for a bank card, but for a white business card with a silver edge. He placed it on the table. Gabriel Stone, CEO, Copper and Pine Group. Marcus froze. His chair screeched against the floor as he jumped up, eyes wide in panic. "You tricked me. This is a trap." Gabriel did not move. He didn't defend himself, didn't raise his hands. He simply held the boy's terrified gaze. "No, I didn't come here to catch you. I came here to free you from this cycle." The air grew heavy, pressing down on them both. Marcus stood there, trembling like a string stretched to its breaking point. The fear in his eyes wasn't fear of the law, it was fear of hope, fragile and dangerous. "You don't understand," Marcus rasped. "To them we aren't people. We are cargo. We are links in the chain. You think a business card can tear down a whole system?" Gabriel rose slowly from his chair. He did not reach out, he only stepped closer until his eyes met Marcus at level. "You're right. A business card alone won't destroy the system. But the power behind it can. Do you think I will let a petty manager like Victor turn my brand into a black market? Do you think I will walk away while children like you are being used? No, Marcus. I know hunger. I know what it feels like to sleep under a kitchen table just to hold on to a scrap of meat. And I swore to myself that if I ever had power, I would never let anyone be devoured by poverty and fear again. Marcus's breath came quick and shallow. For a moment, he wanted to believe, but doubt wrapped around him like the night itself. If you really have power, then why did Eli disappear? Why hasn't anyone stopped Victor? Gabriel swallowed hard. He had no easy answer, yet silence would kill this fragile moment. He placed a hand on his chest, his voice breaking. "Because I came too late, but I am still here, and so are you. Eli may not return, but I swear I will not let another Marcus vanish." Marcus faltered. For the first time, he looked directly into Gabriel's eyes. The panic had faded, leaving only eyes damp and heavy with years of buried pain. Slowly, his chair creaked as he sat back down. Not in agreement, not in refusal, but he stayed. For Gabriel, that was already the greatest answer. In that moment, he saw it clearly. The real enemy was not only Victor, but the entire system built on fear and silence. And he knew the battle had begun, no longer just to save a brand, but to reclaim the dignity of children who had never been seen as human. Gabriel Stone's rented apartment had turned into a war room overnight. The stained white walls were now covered with sticky notes, black and white camera stills, shift schedules, and inventory sheets cross-checked against purchase orders. At the center was a single photo of Victor Kane, his cold eyes and faint smirk captured like a man who believed he was untouchable. Gabriel braced both hands on the table. On his laptop screen, the footage of Marcus making deliveries played again and again. Each time he rewound it, another detail surfaced: the trembling hands when taking money, the way his eyes avoided the camera, and the hardened detachment that had no place in a 17-year-old. He picked up the phone and called Lena Park, his voice low but unyielding. "Prepare the files. Payroll, fake contracts, inventory logs, everything. Tomorrow we walk into that branch with the lawyers, and not in secret. I want every employee and every customer to see the truth." Lena froze on the line. "You mean to expose Victor publicly? That's a huge risk." "No," Gabriel cut her off, his eyes burning in the dark. "This is no longer a risk. This is the only way. The truth must be dragged into the light." The next afternoon, the downtown Copper and Pine was busier than usual. Chandeliers scattered light across polished wood tables, knives and forks clinked in rhythm with the aroma of roasted meat. Everything appeared smooth, effortless, but a storm was quietly approaching. The doors opened. Gabriel stepped inside. No worn coat, no hood pulled low. Today he wore a crisp white shirt, sleeves neatly rolled, his stride steady and upright. Behind him followed Lena Park, 2 company lawyers, and 2 compliance officers. They took the central table, right in the heart of the restaurant, where everyone could see them. The air shifted instantly. Staff froze mid-step. Customers turned their heads. Victor Kane emerged from his office, face pale as if he had seen a ghost. "Welcome, gentlemen," he forced a smile as he approached. "Mr. Stone, I didn't know you would." "Drop the smile," Gabriel cut in, his voice steady and resonant. "I want to see you exactly as you are." Victor faltered, the words striking him like a hammer blow. Around them, employees held their breath. Lena opened her laptop and turned the screen toward Victor. "Here is the inventory report against the purchase orders. The missing quantities line up precisely with the nights marked in red on the shift schedule you signed." One lawyer placed down 2 thick folders. "A list of fake employees, payroll routed to accounts linked to local students, children who were exploited." A tablet screen lit up. On it played the footage of Victor and Marcus handing over black bags at the back door. The creak of bicycle wheels echoed from the recording, filling the restaurant's air with a suffocating weight. Victor's face drained of color. This is a misunderstanding. I can explain." "No need," Gabriel interrupted. His voice cut like a blade. "I don't want excuses. I want the truth." The restaurant fell silent. Customers stopped eating. Staff stood frozen. Victor's empty grin vanished, and the noise that once concealed his crimes was gone. For the first time, those who had lived in fear began to lift their heads, their eyes fixed on the man who had turned this place into a marketplace of fear. Gabriel did not raise his voice. He did not need to. He simply stared at Victor, his eyes blazing with conviction, and declared, "Today, the throne you built out of silence and fear collapses here and now." Victor Kane swallowed hard, sweat glistening on his temple. For a moment he tried to hold on to a twisted smile, his voice breaking. "You don't understand. I was keeping this restaurant alive. I gave those kids money. They needed me. Without me, they would have starved on the street." His words echoed in the silence, raw and hollow. Gabriel Stone sat upright, his eyes sharp as steel. "You call that helping? No, Victor. That was buying fear. You turned children into links in your chain, turned employees into silent accomplices, turned this brand into a black market. And you dare call that saving lives?" The restaurant froze. Then, suddenly, a chair scraped across the floor. The bartender, the one who had always lowered his head and avoided eye contact, stepped forward, his voice trembling but clear. "I saw it, many times, but I was afraid of losing my job. I'm sorry, Mr. Stone." A young kitchen worker spoke next, first in a whisper, then louder. "He made us sign fake ledgers. Anyone who refused lost their shifts." The murmurs swelled, breaking like water against a dam. One voice, then two, then a whole line of employees moved to stand behind Gabriel. They no longer bowed their heads. They had chosen their side. Victor's face burned with anger. He slammed his hand on the table. "Shut up! None of you would even exist here if it weren't for me." "And you think he cares? He's the CEO. He sits up high counting money. Has he ever remembered any of you?" For a second, the room went quiet. Then a voice rang out from the back of the kitchen, hoarse but steady. "He may forget, but today he came back. And you, Victor, you were never here for us." It was Arturo Reyes, the old head chef, thin and worn, eyes dark with years of silence. He stepped out, untying his apron and laying it on the table like a verdict. Gabriel turned to Victor, his voice low but striking like a bell. "You think I didn't know? You think I was too distant to see the truth? You're wrong. It is precisely because I have known hunger that I will never accept a man who turns the desperation of children into a weapon." Victor let out a hollow laugh, like a man cornered. "So what now? Shut this place down? Kill your own brand?" Gabriel rose to his feet, slow, straight. Every step he took toward Victor fell like the blow of a hammer. "I'm not killing this brand. I am saving it by cutting out the cancer named Victor Kane." The compliance officers stepped forward. One of them produced a sheet of paper, reading with clarity. "Victor Kane, you are under investigation for financial fraud, embezzlement, and the exploitation of minors." Victor's face drained. He staggered back, but the restaurant had already chosen its side. The eyes that once looked away now stared straight into him, without pity. A voice rose from a customer's table. "This should have happened long ago." Another murmured, "At last, justice." Victor thrashed, trying to resist, but when the security guard's hand landed firmly on his shoulder, he knew it was over. The power he had built from fear collapsed in a single afternoon. Gabriel looked into his eyes, no longer with rage, but with bitter finality. "You had the chance to lead through trust. Instead, you led through threats, and today, it is that fear that has come back to consume you." Victor lowered his head. The cold steel of handcuffs clicked shut. Nothing remained but the hum of whispers, the sighs of relief, and the employee's eyes lit with freedom after months of oppression. Gabriel did not smile. He simply turned and walked away, leaving behind a lesson carved deep. True power is not forcing people to bow, but giving them the courage to stand tall. The night after the confrontation, the kitchen of Copper and Pine was empty. Only the scent of garlic, the sting of burnt oil, and streaks of light glistening on freshly mopped tiles remained. Gabriel Stone sat alone at the bar, a cold cup of black coffee before him. He had just weathered a storm, but he knew the real storm was only beginning. His phone vibrated. A message appeared. "For real?" 3 trembling words glowed on the screen. The sender was Marcus. Gabriel closed his eyes and typed back, "Safe now. Victor's gone." He waited. 10 minutes, 20, half an hour. No reply. Only near midnight did the screen flare with 3 blinking dots, followed by a single line. "We can sleep tonight?" His chest tightened. He hit call immediately. On the other end, Marcus's ragged breathing broke through, mixed with the sound of rain pounding on a tin roof. "Marcus," Gabriel's voice softened. "You don't need to stand guard anymore. There's no Victor left to scare you." A long silence followed. Then a trembling exhale, like the first time the boy dared to let go. "I haven't slept a single night without waking up in fear. For a year." Gabriel pressed his hand to his forehead. He refused to give hollow promises. He chose truth instead. "I can't erase the nightmares, but I can stay awake with you. I can be tired with you until the day you find real sleep again." On the other end, the soft sniffles faded, then silence. The line remained open. 2 breaths, one old and weathered, one young and stolen of its childhood, merged together. No words were needed. It was enough to know that this time, no one was being left behind. The next day, the second-floor meeting room of the downtown branch became the site of a gathering unlike any other. No talk of revenue, no contracts. Only 8 children sat there, clothes wrinkled, eyes wary like hunted strays. Marcus sat in the corner, clutching his backpack. Beside him were Theo, little Nia in her yellow hoodie, and several unfamiliar faces, some no older than 15. Gabriel walked in without a briefcase, without a suit. He came empty-handed. His gaze swept across their faces, not avoiding their fear, not pretending to soften it. He spoke slowly, each word laid down like stone. "I know that people in shirts and ties have failed you before, but today, I want to be the first who doesn't. You are not ghosts. You have the right to choose." No applause followed. No sparks of trust lit in their eyes. Only a silence so heavy it pressed against the walls. A girl with tangled hair, no more than 15, whispered, "Are you going to send us to juvenile detention?" Gabriel shook his head. "No. You will stay if you want. And you will learn, not to carry contraband, but to cook, to bake, to manage. You will learn to live as human beings." Marcus lifted his head for the first time. His eyes were red, but he no longer looked away. He glanced around. No one stood to leave. Only hesitation lingered, but no one turned their back. Gabriel nodded slightly. "That is enough. We begin from this silence." He placed 8 envelopes on the table. Inside each one was a hotel room key, $1,000 in cash, and a handwritten note. "You owe no one. You deserve a chance." Thin, fragile hands touched the envelopes. No one smiled. No one said thank you. but no one pushed them away. For Gabriel, that was enough. The seeds had been planted. He turned toward the glass pane. Below, head chef Arturo Reyes was polishing knives, his expression stern but brighter than usual. In this kitchen, tomorrow would carry not only the scent of food, but also the scent of a new beginning. And for the first time in months, Gabriel allowed himself to believe that Copper and Pine could once again become a home. That morning, the kitchen of Copper and Pine no longer echoed with shouting or cold commands. Instead, there was another kind of silence, the silence of watchful eyes, filled with anticipation and caution. 8 children sat close together at the long steel table. Their clothes were still wrinkled, their shoes worn thin, their hands marked with calluses. Yet their gazes were sharp, like wild birds ready to take flight at the slightest disturbance. Marcus sat at the head of the table, his backpack tucked under his feet, his eyes darting around as if he still could not believe this room was truly safe. Arturo Reyes, the old head chef, a man who had spent his life by the fire of the stove, placed a knife on the table before them. His voice was hoarse but warm. "This is not a weapon. It is a tool. If you know how to use it, it can change your life." A girl reached timidly toward the handle, only to pull back as if it were hot coals. Arturo smiled gently, pushing it closer. "There is no rush. Just feel it. Any knife will obey if the hand is patient enough." At the corner of the table, Gabriel Stone stood with his arms folded, observing. He did not interfere. He did not lecture. He knew the children did not need speeches. What they needed was something real, the feel of a knife handle in their palm, the smell of herbs, the sound of steel against the cutting board. They needed the feeling of living like ordinary people. Marcus picked up the first knife. His hand trembled, but his eyes were fierce. He struck down on an onion, breaking it into uneven chunks. A flash of frustration flickered in his eyes, but Arturo placed a hand on his shoulder. "It doesn't need to be perfect. It only needs to be real. The knife will learn the rhythm of your hand, just as you will relearn the rhythm of your breath." Marcus exhaled, and on his second cut, the slice came cleaner. Beside him, Naya, the girl in the yellow hoodie, bent over her notebook, forming letters with care. The pen shook, the ink smudged, but she kept writing. On the white page, 3 uneven but unmistakable letters appeared. Rosemary. She repeated it 3 times, then let a faint smile slip through. A trembling smile, unfamiliar but honest. "That is the magic of the kitchen," Arturo whispered. "Here, even words are seasoning. Each time you write the name of an ingredient correctly, you take back a piece of the life that was stolen from you." The room seemed brighter, the clink of knives, the rustle of paper, the soft breaths of children who once knew only fear filled the air. Gabriel's eyes blurred as he looked around. He saw clearly that this was no longer a commercial kitchen. It was a classroom, a shelter, a place where children once treated as commodities were beginning to relearn how to be human. Marcus set the knife down and lifted his gaze to Gabriel. For the first time, his eyes held not only suspicion, there was a faint spark, fragile but true, of trust. Gabriel gave a small nod. He said nothing. He knew that sometimes trust did not need to be spoken. It only needed to be acknowledged with a nod. In that kitchen, a fire had been rekindled, not the kind that consumes, but the kind that warms. The Seattle rain drizzled all afternoon, laying a damp gray film across the kitchen windows of Copper and Pine. Inside, the lights glowed. The steady rhythm of knives on cutting boards filled the room, and Arturo's patient voice guided each small movement. No one noticed the back door creak open. A figure stepped in, clothes caked with mud. His shirt was torn at the shoulder. A faint streak of blood smeared across his forehead. Marcus was peeling carrots when he froze, the knife clattering onto the board. His eyes went wide, his lips trembling as the words slipped out like a prayer. Eli. The entire kitchen froze. The other children stared at each other, stunned, as though they were looking at a ghost. Eli, the boy who had vanished without a trace, now stood in the doorway, his body shaking from the cold, but his eyes no longer empty. They burned, alive with something stronger than fear, the will to survive. Marcus lunged forward, wrapping his arms around his friend, his shoulders quaking. Eli did not speak, only patted Marcus's back with a thin, muddy hand. The sight forced Arturo to turn away, hiding the glimmer in his eyes. Gabriel Stone stepped forward, laying a hand gently on Eli's shoulder. "Son, what happened to you?" Eli gasped for breath, then pulled from his soaked backpack a crumpled sheet of paper. He unfolded it, the ink blurred by water but still legible. A distribution map. "I took it from Victor's office before he found me. I ran. I kept it. I didn't know who to trust with it, but now I trust you." His voice was hoarse, trembling, yet clear with every word. Gabriel stared at the paper. It was more than a map. It was the ultimate evidence. A list of delivery addresses, dates, even Victor's handwritten marks. A smuggling network, far bigger than this restaurant alone. The kitchen was utterly silent. The sound of rain on the awning mixed with the pounding hearts of everyone in the room. Gabriel gripped the paper tightly, his chest swelling as if it might burst. "You have already done the hardest part, Eli," he said, his voice raw with emotion. "You came back." Eli bit his lip, eyes wet. "Now what do I do?" Gabriel did not hesitate. "Wash your hands, then learn how to cut onions. The rest leave to me." There was no applause, no cheers. But when Arturo placed a small knife into Eli's hand, the whole kitchen exhaled in relief. A new beginning had truly arrived. In the corner, Marcus watched his friend, his lips curling into a fragile smile. The rare smile of a boy who had only ever known darkness. Gabriel stepped back, watching the two boys side by side, and in his heart he heard a whisper. This is no longer about saving a brand. This is about giving childhood back. 1 month later, Copper and Pine's downtown branch, once Victor's dark den, had transformed completely. In the kitchen, the rhythm of knives on cutting boards filled the air. But this time it was not the soulless hum of machines. It was the sound of learning, of patience, of growth. Marcus stood beside Eli, folding tablecloths, his hands steady now, no longer trembling. Nia, still in her yellow hoodie, smiled shyly as she spelled the word basil correctly in her notebook. Arturo Reyes walked around the room, guiding each small detail. No one lowered their head anymore. No one flinched at the sound of the back door opening. On the wall, an old wooden board had been hung, painted in uneven strokes of green and yellow. The words were crooked but clear. "We don't just serve food, we serve dignity." Gabriel Stone stepped inside and stopped in front of the board. He did not correct the spelling. He did not criticize the messy brushwork. He only smiled, because the truth was, this was the most beautiful declaration the brand had ever carried. That afternoon, on Gabriel's desk, a worn envelope was waiting. No name written on it, only shaky handwriting. For you. He opened it. Inside were a few trembling lines, the ink blurred by tears. I once worked at Copper and Pine. Victor fired me because he said I didn't fit the image of the restaurant. I lost faith. I thought nowhere would ever need someone like me. But then I saw you in the news, saw the children given a chance. I began to teach myself how to bake at home. 3 loaves a week, sold to neighbors. Not much, but they are mine. Thank you for making me believe that no one is born to remain an outsider forever. Gabriel folded the letter, his vision blurred. He did not need to know the name of the writer. He did not need to respond. It was enough to know that the seed had sprouted elsewhere, somewhere he had never even touched. Later that evening, the Copper and Pine kitchen buzzed with life. Marcus clumsily set a tart onto a tray, misshapen. Its crust burned, but his eyes shone with light. He grabbed a pen and scrawled across the box, "Freedom Tart." Gabriel stood still, his eyes glistening, not because of the pastry, but because of the message. This was no longer just food. It was a declaration. Freedom may be crooked, it may be burnt, but it is made by hands that are real. He drew a deep breath, letting the scent of flour, sugar, and hope fill his lungs. Then he turned to the children. Tomorrow, we are not just selling food. We are selling a story. And that story is you. In the world of business, people often talk about profit, market share, or growth rates. But the story of Copper and Pine has proven something else. The true strength of an organization is not found in numbers, but in how it treats the people who seem invisible. Gabriel Stone did not choose to look away. He chose to look directly into the darkness, where children were exploited, where fear was turned into a weapon, and he lit a lamp. That is the essence of a true leader, not just restoring a brand, but restoring dignity to lives that had been forgotten. If you believe that every person deserves a second chance, press like to help spread this message. And don't forget to subscribe so you can follow us on the journeys ahead, where justice, compassion, and courage walk side by side. Finally, I want to hear your thoughts. Comment below with just 2 short words, "Second chance," as a reminder to each other that in every darkness, opportunity always exists for those who are seen and lifted up.